Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Sunday, October 15th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Penn State game is in 6 days. The game against Michigan in 41 days. Ohio State has what maybe seemed at times like it could have been the biggest trap game on the schedule safely in its rearview mirror. Ohio State 41, Purdue 7. Never really in doubt. It was Purdue had the ball. They got the ball to start the game. They went down the field, missed a field goal. Ohio State got the ball back, had the Marvin Harrison drive that ended with a Marvin Harrison touchdown, and it just never felt like Ohio State was in any real danger after that, Kevin. And based on so many previous trips to this Ross-Ade Stadium, that was probably a welcome sight for Ohio State fans.
We were talking about your bowl-eligible Ohio State Buckeyes.
Oh, that's true.
With that sixth win.
How did we not mention that on 2 hours of post-game
coverage? I know. Well, I get that tweet out every year, and most people get the joke, and one person is always a little slow on it. They're like, what are you talking about? This team doesn't just compete for bowl eligibility. I'm like, I know. That's the joke. But, yeah, it was not a game that really ever felt like it was in danger. Certainly they felt that way in previous games this season. We knew that Purdue was a little banged up, and Ohio State was able to do some things well. There's still some things that require a decent amount of work. You worry a little bit maybe about the health of the team, but it's a physical game regardless of who it is you're playing, and contact sport is going to have contact injuries sometimes. So I think all in all that Ryan Day and his team is happy to get out of here with a dub, and I'm sure we'll find another game to talk about as being the next trap.
Yeah, and they got to go to Wisconsin the week after Penn State, so we'll get there eventually. But this was a game where Ohio State was playing. Purdue was missing a bunch of guys, and I think that kind of colors some of the conversation we have here. I mean, Ohio State dominated the Purdue offensive line, but the Purdue offensive line was missing a couple guys. So how much does that mean? We got to kind of sort that out. But Ohio State was missing a bunch of guys, too. Ohio State was playing without TreVeyon Henderson, without Miyan Williams. Chip Trayanum goes down with an injury partway through the game. And then off the bench comes Dallan Hayden, who this week, Ryan Day talked about the fact that, the plan is to redshirt him, and he's only going to play, we're going to try and keep it to 4 games, preserve that year of eligibility for him. You don't want to, have him play 6 games, but he's only getting 3 carries in the game, and it's not really, you don't want to burn a year of eligibility just to burn a year of eligibility. After watching Dallan Hayden on Saturday at Purdue, and having seen Dallan Hayden against Maryland last year, I think that you might want to look at giving Dallan Hayden more carries and sort of seeing what you got, because you've had limited exposure to him, but both times you've seen him out there as sort of, the main guy due to injuries, it's looked pretty consistent and it's looked pretty good. Yeah,
this isn't a case of him going out and getting 3 or 4 carries in garbage time. The Maryland game, he had to really carry the mail. In this game, there was a stretch where he had to be the guy. And it's difficult to just sit there and say, well, based on this small sample size, he should be the number 1 back or the number 2 back. But what he should be for sure is in the mix, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And I guarantee you, if you ask Dallan and if you ask his dad, Aaron, do you want to sit there and forego that year of eligibility that you'd be able to keep with a red shirt and play this year? I guarantee you the answer is going to be yes. Mm-hmm. We don't see a lot of 5th-year running backs out there that have an NFL track, because we know you get a limited amount of hits. There's a limited amount of tread on those tires. I think they have to have some real honest conversations internally that come up with the result of we need to sit there and see more Dallan.
Yeah, it feels like that the running game looked much better than it has. It felt like they maybe found some answers there with Dallan Hayden. They maybe found some answers in the goal line situation as well. Hayden looked okay down there, but they also had put in the Devin Brown package, formerly known as the Tate Martell package, where the starting quarterback trots off the field, the backup quarterback, who's a little more mobile, comes in. And for the first time they ran it, it worked great. The second time they ran it, they turned the ball over. But it feels like maybe they've found something there, too.
Yeah, we have all been wondering when we're going to see the ground Brown package, and we finally got to see it. And to take something off of Buckeye Weekly podcast after the game, why show it this week? Well, you can make some arguments there. Now you give Penn State's something else to look at. You can sit there and certainly do different things out of those formations. It's not necessarily, this is all we can think of right here. We got these 2 or 3 plays, and well, damn it, if they don't work, I don't know. We're all out of ideas. So there's a lot to it, but I'm okay with everybody wants to be vanilla up until their big game. But if you have not gone out there and taken and played some of these real plays outside of the laboratory, you really don't know what you have.
Yeah, you have to do some stuff. I mean, you can't just save everything for the 2 big games on the schedule. You're gonna iterate off of what you showed against Purdue. Yeah, they showed the runs, and they showed him throwing once, but you're gonna have different plays off of that, and so there are plenty of chances to expand what they ran against Purdue next week against Penn State. And it also gives Penn State something to worry about this week during practice. That you only have so much time during practice, you only have so much film prep time. Now that's one more thing that they get thrown on their plate this week, and because they have had a lot of time. They had a week off, and then they played UMass on Saturday, and I think the week before that they played Northwestern. So they've really had 3 games in a row that were not particularly challenging, leading up to that Ohio State game. But we'll get to the Penn State game later. Let's talk a little bit about the defensive side of the ball. Purdue, as I mentioned earlier, offensive line was banged up. You don't want to, immediately say greatest defensive line in the history of football, but the defensive line looked against a banged up Purdue offensive line like you should look against a banged up offensive line.
Yeah, they were able to get home a couple times with Hudson Card, somebody who was sacked 6 times against Iowa. In the previous game, had several games where he'd been sacked twice. Ohio State was able to get in there and really chase him around. And while there were a couple times Ohio State didn't get home, they were able to force Hudson Card into some bad decisions, into some bad throws and things along those lines. But it was an encouraging step in terms of, if you just look at it in a vacuum, it's like finally seeing the line get home, seeing that pressure, seeing them get home with just a 4-man rush, some 5-man rush thrown in there too. I think if you are a believer in momentum and success begetting success, it's happening at the right time then. And obviously Penn State's going to be a little bit more challenging, but I think there's a mixed story out there how good Penn State's offensive line is. I'm probably more on the negative side of thinking that it may be better than usual, but I don't think it is a great line by any stretch of the imagination. They lost Landon Tegwall at the beginning of the season, one of their starting guards. I mean, obviously they've had enough games played now that the guy who stepped into that role isn't exactly green, but it'll be interesting to see what happens on next Saturday on Fox, 12 p.m., big noon kickoff when the Buckeyes host the Nittany Lions.
And there are, after the game, the Buckeyes lost several players to injury either before or during the game. Just to run through them real quick, TreVeyon Henderson and Emeka Egbuka did not play. Chip Trayanum, Miyan Williams did not play. Those were injuries prior to the game. Chip Trayanum looked like he probably got his bell rung on a big hit, so he left the game, didn't come back. The other one was Denzel Burke. Denzel Burke is maybe potentially of all of those the most impactful, because they are so deep at wide receiver that they can play without Emeka Egbuka. You obviously want to have him there. Denzel Burke has been so good. He has been the lockdown guy. It's just that side of the field. You don't even look. You don't even worry about it. We don't know what happened with Denzel Burke. No one seems to have a straight answer on that. Ryan Day didn't give any kind of updates. That feels like that might be one of the biggest stories going into this Penn State game. What happened? What's the deal? And how is that going to impact his availability for that Penn State game?
Yeah, be ready to drink every time we're asked over on the Huddle board or on social about that one. I've already been asked multiple times just here in the hours after the game, and we don't know what we don't know. I mean, obviously Ohio State is blessed with having Jordan Hancock and Davison Igbinosun, and then we certainly saw Jermaine Matthews step in and get some meaningful minutes, but I don't know if I want to thrust a true freshman into the Penn State game. I mean, obviously we've seen situations where young guys like Jair Brown have been thrust into those types of spots, especially with Ohio State being a little thin in the corner in previous seasons. They're getting a little bit deeper now. you want to have Denzel Burke. I mean, maybe Drew Allard's not lighting the world on fire. Maybe they're not doing a lot of downfield passing. But you still want to have somebody who is by far your best cover guy, somebody who really has a grasp on everything. And I'm not talking like a Nick Bonosin type of grasp where it's more like this, but yeah, you want to get him back.
Yeah, so we'll be keeping an eye on that story, among many other things this week as the Buckeyes head into one of the biggest games on the college football calendar this year. I mean, the Big Ten East is just so good. The top three teams in the Big Ten East are all legitimate college football playoff and probably national championship contenders. I think you could make an argument that any of those three teams, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, could very easily not just make the college football playoff, but win a college football playoff game, or perhaps two. So it'll be quite a week in Columbus, quite a week at BuckeyeHuddle.com as we take a look at that game and all the many storylines that we're going to have to break down this week, looking at just from the Penn State side. Boy, this is a get over the hump game. For Ohio State, how Ohio State fans feel about Michigan, and oh boy, they really need to beat Michigan this year. They've lost twice to Michigan in a row. Penn State has beaten Ohio State once since 2011. I mean, I think Penn State fans are pretty hungry for a win over Ohio State. Drew Allar coming into a hostile stadium for the first time, having to play at Ohio Stadium. That's going to be a challenge. I know he played at Michigan last year, but he wasn't the starter. He came in, I think, after Sean Clifford got hurt. This is going to be, I think, the first time this season where he's the guy and he's got to face a hostile crowd. Best defense he will have faced. How's that offensive line going to hold up? How's the Ohio State defensive line going to hold up? How's the Ohio State offensive line going to hold up? I mean, there are a million stories to talk about this week coming into a very, very big game. So that'll be a fun week. Give me the one storyline that you think is either the most interesting to you or the one that's going to have the biggest potential impact on next week's game.
Well, normally we talk a little bit before the show and I have a minute to process things. There are a lot of things there. I think that the biggest thing for me is going to be who is going to be running the ball for Ohio State and how are they going to be doing it. Obviously, as I gave a real roaring endorsement of Penn State's offensive line, the fact is that their offensive line, at whatever state it is still significantly better than where Purdue's was today, especially losing a player, had to be carted off. Prayers up to him and with whatever's happening with his injury. But who's going to be running for Ohio State? Are we going to see TreVeyon Henderson back? Are we going to see Miyan Williams? I mean, what does Chip Trayanum? Are they going to really finally take Dallan Hayden out of the Mylar, protective coating and just say, to heck with this, we're going to play him? I think that Ohio State's going to have to be able to fight with both arms, running and passing, to be able to get to the goal of winning the game. This Purdue team, or this Penn State team, is not a joke. And I have a feeling all of our scores are going to be clustered pretty tight, and I don't think you're going to see a lot of wide variance in at least margin of victory one way or the other. I mean, maybe we may feel a little bit differently of, is this going to be a low-scoring game or a super low-scoring game? And then, of course, when we say that, it ends up being a high one.
Yeah, that's when it ends up 48-45, and everyone kind of goes, what? How? One other note that we did want to at least mention here, Ohio State added a 2025 cornerback commit on the defensive side of the ball, four-star corner out of the Baltimore powerhouse St. Francis Academy. That is Blake Woodby. Didn't call him Jaden Woodby. Look at that. I was sure I was going to do it. Blake Woodby. Ohio State lands that commitment. You can find much more on that news, as well as all the game and reaction and all that good stuff, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And make sure you are also following us on YouTube at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.